Okay, so Doctor Who is back after a long, sort of wait. It's been a year since the last episode aired, Resolution. A lot hasn't happened between then and there because nothing has been produced in this gap year, which is a bit unusual because in every other gap year we've had something, whether it be Class or the specials in the other Doctor Who gap years. Even in 1986 there was Slipback, but no, all we've got is a couple of VR games, I guess, is something, I guess. But Doctor Who is back with an episode that has, I think, is a step up. I'm just giving you some non-spoiler thoughts before I get into spoiler stuff. Well, I think it is a slight step up from Series 11, and I think it was more interesting in terms of concept than the opener to Series 11. I feel more intrigued by the villain than I did in Series 11. But Chris Chibnall's scripting issues continue to plague him, I think, is probably the first thing that comes out of my mind. And I'm going to say this before I get into the actual spoiler bit, but I think he uses a thing that they used quite a bit when I watched The Rise of Skywalker. They used a sort of shock tactic, I think is the way I describe it, to I think win over fans so that they probably wouldn't complain is the best way I'm going to put it, because what happens at the end of the episode is a Palpatine moment. I'm going to put it bluntly there. So while I'm sure a lot of fans are glad to have this person back, it doesn't feel natural, if I was to put it bluntly there. I don't know, I have to wait for the second part to really decide on that, but yeah, I'm just going to say I don't think Chris Chibnall's writing has improved, but I will say that I think it is a more interesting concept, and I do think in many ways he has slightly improved, but he's very much using shock tactics to clearly disguise the fact that his writing isn't much better. But I do appreciate the fact that it does seem a bit better. But obviously I have to get into some spoilery stuff, so if you have not yet seen Spyfall Part 1, here there will be spoilers from now on, including a rather massive one which is probably taking the internet by storm, but I haven't checked Twitter because I don't want that to affect my opinion of it, because I know that it will. But I'm going to sort of just quickly write down some notes to give her a more organised review. But they were my sort of off the top of my head thoughts so far. But I'm going to just grab some notes and then I'll be back to you in a minute. Okay, so the first person I'm going to talk about, I'm going to sort of talk about each character first, is Jodie Whittaker as the Doctor. I think she has improved, actually. I was quite impressed with her performance here. It was much more engaging and humorous than Series 11. I think a lot of her humour landed. I particularly liked the segment at the start where she's in like a garage fixing up her TARDIS. I thought she had some great humorous moments there, and I do think that she does have a lot. I'm starting to warm to her a lot more. Since Series 11, I found her performance slightly grating, but I think it's grown on me since, and I think I was a bit harsh on some of the Series 11 episodes, if I'm really honest, but I do think it works here. I think her sort of joltsy run about, she's a bit like a rabbit, isn't she? Is slightly, I think she's starting to come into her own here. I think that's a good thing. And in many ways, I think Jodie Whittaker's performance is starting to make up for the fact that the writing is becoming a bit poor, a bit weak. I still think that that's probably the worst offender here, because everything else is fine, I think, actually. I'll just say that before, yeah. But, yeah, I think she had some great chemistry with a lot of the characters. Her reaction to the Master's reveal, because obviously now we're in spoiler territory, I can tell you that, is actually quite good. I think she's probably just not a notch below Peter Capaldi's reaction to when Missy was revealed. It is a very similar unveiling, actually. I think that was something that kind of took me aback, is how similar it is to that reveal. But I'll get to that a bit later. But I think her reaction to that reveal was quite good. And I think her performance throughout is less annoying. And I really am starting to like her a bit more. Which is good, I guess. We'll see how it develops across the rest of the series. There's nothing really set up for her character. I was expecting... because there's supposed to be some kind of story arc. I was expecting something to get set up, but it didn't. I mean, there's still 9 episodes, so I can't really judge them on that just yet. But I think she was good in this, which makes her, and I think she's much better, and she has improved her performance upon her previous installments. Up is Yaz, who I'm very pleased to say has improved her performance a lot, actually. I think Chris Chibnall has noted something that I am happy that he has, is that I think the benefit of a 2-part adventure as well is that they have more time for the companions, and I think Yaz is finally given something to do, which I was really happy with. I think her reaction to the monsters in this story is quite interesting, and particularly when she gets zapped from Barton's office. I think that moment was quite impactful for her, and I could tell from the scene where she was crying that she could act. I'm very pleased that she's getting something to do, which I thought probably wouldn't happen. I was quite happy that she did get something to do. I think her chemistry with Ryan is actually very good. I think a lot of people from series 11 have called Thasmin, which is the 13th Doctor and Yaz's ship name. But I'm starting to see a bit of a crackle of chemistry between her and Ryan. I think Ryaz could be a thing. Is it Razzle, I guess. Razzle could work, Raz. But yeah, I think I'm starting to see the chemistry there. I think that they might end up being a couple. I know the whole joke is that he's trying to get his sister's number and his sister's trying to get his number. But I think that might be something that causes Ryan and Yaz to get together as well, which is quite nice. I think Ryan and Yaz obviously are getting a lot more to do in this episode, as I'll probably get to in a minute, who suffers Nissa syndrome in this episode, which is a shame because I like his character. But yeah, Yaz has got some great things to do. She has some great interactions with Barton. I think she's very good in the scenes where she's sort of undercover trying to get all the information. And she does get a lot to do, and I'm glad that she's finally getting to blossom there, which is very good. Yeah. Up is Ryan, who also gets quite a bit to do in this episode as well. He has as I mentioned, has some great chemistry with Yaz. He also is very good in this situation where they're trying to gather information. His scene at the start with when he's playing basketball with his friends was also a nice reminder that he's dyspraxic as well, which I actually did like, the fact that they were trying to introduce that in series 11. I think there's a lot of things Doctor Who has missed out in the past, which I think is nice that they're slightly starting to include it now. I think the fact that he had that moment with his friends, he's saying, "Oh, I've been ill," and so on. That was a great scene. The way he delivered that is just trying to say, "Oh yeah, I was ill." And they say, "You're really unlucky, aren't you?" I thought that was a nice little reminder. But also, I thought could maybe because we see Yaz's family, we see Ryan with his friends. I think if we're lucky, I think if we see them again, I would like to see that have repercussions on their sort of stability. We obviously see Yaz is getting in a bit of hot water with her subordinates because she keeps on going off every 5 seconds. But I think it's nice that they are starting to sort of work their friendships in the way that Russell T Davies would. I think that was something that was left behind in the Stephen Moffat era. I'm trying to be overly positive because I have a lot of major problems with this episode as well. But yeah, that's why I'm being overly positive. But yeah, I think that element of that episode could have potential to have repercussions. I just hope that it does, because a lot of stuff in series 11 was set up to have repercussions and it didn't. But for all I know, it might come up later up, but I think that would just be a bit lazy if they just thought, oh yeah, we'll throw that thing in series 11 and then not get around to it until series 13. I don't know. But I am starting to feel this TARDIS team, actually. I will say that I am starting to feel their chemistry in a bit. I think the TARDIS team structure is coming together a lot better than it did in series 11. They all feel connected together. It does seem a bit when they add the other character, the Master, we can just call the Master, I suppose. I'd have to learn his other name, because I can't remember it. But that other guy does feel a bit out of place, and that other guy I'll get to later, but I'll save it for later. But Ryan does get a lot to do, but probably not much as the Yaz. But it's nice to see him and Yaz having a nice moment together here or there. Now we get to the rather unfortunate casualty of this story, is Graham, who becomes, I think, in many ways, the Nissa of this story. He does get some great one-liners. I think Graham's very good at delivering one-liners about, I thought his line about worst Uber ever was very funny. I did like that. I was quite taken aback by how little he gets to do in this episode. I think in many ways, the Master character, as obviously he is the Master, he has that thing about, he says, he's just here for the running commentary. He does feel like that in this episode, whereas in series 11 he did feel more a part of the adventure, whereas in this story Graham does feel like he's just here to make comments, but it's fine because I do like him doing that. So really there isn't much to say because he didn't do much. I think he had an interesting moment with Ryan where they're playing at the gambling tables, and he's like, Ryan scores, like really gets a good, I don't know anything about gambling, so but he does have a nice moment where they're playing gambling, and they have a strong bond. I'll give them that. They have a very strong, interesting bond, and I like that. But yeah, that's Graham for you. He's standard Graham. He's doing well, but I'd like to see him do more. Again, this is two-parter, so he could get something to do in part 2 that might be interesting. They also brought up the cancer thing. Just saying, I think he's going to be dead by the end of the series. Although I said he would probably be dead by the end of series 11, and he wasn't. But oh well. But yeah, I think Graham is good in this episode as much as he was in series 11. Not much has changed for him, really. He's apart from the fact he's doing a bit less, but that's understandable because Bradley Walsh is quite old. I mean, he's not that old, but, not old enough to run and do lots of action, but to be fair, neither do Ryan and Yaz. But yeah, he's standard Graham, really. Okay, so let's take a bit of a break from the main cast analysis and talk about some other things about the episode before we get into the guest cast. First thing I sort of highlighted is the soundtrack. I think it's very, obviously it's called Spyfall. I still can't believe they called it Spyfall. It's an awful title, I'll give it that, but I did like the soundtrack, and I think it does have that quality of being a sort of, like Return of Dr. Mysterio, it has that sort of movie-esque feel to it, and I do think, I said it about Series 11 last year, I think each episode does feel more like a mini-movie than any other Doctor Who episode has before it. I'll give them that. Admittedly, not very well-written movies, but that's the way it is. I did enjoy the Bond-esque feel, particularly as they're going into that sort of party at Barton's house. I think the way they managed that, the themes sound like the James Bond theme, but it was actually the 13th Doctor's theme. I loved that. It's so awful, but I love it, is what I said at the time. It's very cheesy. It's very, very cheesy, but I did like it. And I think the music cues, when they were doing that car chase scene at the start, was very fast-paced, was very enjoyable. Again, I don't think I could say a bad word against Sigana Canola's soundtrack, because it is genuinely the best music for Doctor Who since Series 4, I think. Series 4 has a masterful soundtrack, it's actually the best. But Series 11's soundtrack is one of the strongest parts of Series 11, as well as the visual, the way it's shot. Series 11 and Series 12 are the best shot episodes of entirely Doctor Who. Usually the VFX are very good. I will say this though, the alien creatures, when they're sort of like coming through the walls, I think the creatures look a bit odd, but I mean that's kind of the way they are, really. But they did look a bit off. But when they were like those weird light things, I think that was very well executed, because they did look very spooky, very spooky. I think the creatures had a great way of building up the tension. I know my mum didn't think so, but I thought it had a great way of building up the tension, particularly that sequence where they're in the outback and there's that the lights are switching on and off. I think that was a particularly suspenseful scene where the woman's just going round and round, and then it appears and then it sort of loses suspense. I will grant that, but it looks very interesting. where the creatures sort of like pop off, they kind of look like they're hovering a bit, which is a bit spooky. But they look like ghosts. I think. Are they like echoes of some kind of like alien form? It mentions that they're not in that's not their real form. But when you go in that weird, there's a sort of separate universe. So the Yaz and the Doctor gets yanked. The Doctor gets yeeted into another dimension. She gets yeeted into another dimension with their like umbilical cords, or like what's it called? Kelp. It looks like kelp, like in the sea. I don't know if anyone knows what kelp is. I know what it is because of Octonauts. But yeah, I watched Octonauts when I was a little person. Little, I still am relatively young, but I won't flaunt my youth. But the creatures, I'm interested to know what that kelp is. I'm just going to call it kelp for now. Jodie's messy hair looked very funny at the end of the episode as well, before we get into that. But yeah, that kelp looked interesting. I never thought I'd say that kelp looked interesting, but I will grant them, it does look just as good as Series 11, if not somewhat better. I liked how the chase scenes were all shot. I think they're very good at chase scenes. They proved that with Resolution. That was one of the better parts of Resolution, was the action scenes. And the motorbike chase through the vineyards. We saw most of it in the trailer, but I think it was very good and very well shot still anyway. But yeah, I liked that. But yeah, that's sort of my thoughts on the other things. I did say I didn't like the writing. The thing that's lost mostly is the tension. I think the director, whoever's directing, I'm not sure who's directing it, whoever directs these episodes is doing their best to build up the suspense, but I think it's mainly lost because there's a lot of writing failures, I think. As I said, I think the plot of this story, it feels overstretched. And I can't really judge how overstretched it is till I've seen the second part. I did contemplate doing a combined review for both parts, but I wanted because that master cliffhanger sort of sealed the deal for me. I had to talk about this because it's interesting what he's done, but also very poor. But as I said, the writing, the scene where the master, I'm going to talk about the master reveal here, but the scene where the master is revealed to be I can't remember his name, but he's the guy from An Adventure in Space and Time who played the director, Waris Hussein. See, I remember that. I don't remember the character's name. But yeah, the master reveal is literally the same reveal as it is at the end of Dark Water in 2014. It's exactly the same reveal. Jodie gives pretty much a textbook version of that Peter Capaldi reaction, and I don't know, he seems a bit off the hinge, which I suppose the master's supposed to be. I'm not entirely won over yet, but I've only seen him for 5 seconds. I knew he was the Doctor, I knew he was the Master as soon as I saw his house flying in the sky. I figured it out then, and I realised, I don't know, but he didn't quite feel like... I'll get to the actual performance really later, but I will talk about the Master here, but then I'll talk about the actual... because they feel like two different characters, which is quite good in a way, because it does feel like you don't quite realise that they're the same, I would not have guessed that it was the Master until he said, oh there's the TARDIS and it's floating through the air, because what else is it going to be? It looks a bit up from Disney Pixar's Up, but without the balloons, so it's like less cheerful. But his O thing, he's called O, but it doesn't... I can see why a lot of people are excited, because it is the Master. But I'll have to see if I'm completely won over. Again, I can't judge a lot of this until I've seen the second part. So we'll see how much I can judge of this by the end of part 2. Now, there's obviously the chance that the Master might just come back at a later date in the series, which is, again, a very likely thought, actually. The Master just might have got him on that plane to blow the Doctor up. But again, yeah, the Master... I'm not won over yet, but I think he has, because he's very good in An Adventure in Space and Time. I love An Adventure in Space and Time. I think if he does it right, he can win me over. But I'm not. I just feel lazy. It just feels like a shock tactic to get me into the series, and I think that's what the series 12 is going to be about. I think it's very much a Rise of Skywalker. I think it will probably end up, if I was to say that. But I did like a lot of this story. There's a lot to like. There's a lot to like in A Rise of Skywalker as well. But yeah, I'm going to talk about the guest cast now, because I've been rambling for too long. Quickly, down with the guest cast. Stephen Fry, there isn't much to talk about here because he actually died very early on in the episode. He just got shot by one of the creatures. What he did was very good because Stephen Fry is amazing. There was no way it wasn't going to be a good performance. I think he did a nice, funny commentary on the whole spy movie C-type creature. C-type creature? C-type person. But I thought he gave a good performance. I would have liked to see more of him. Maybe he's not dead. Maybe he has a clone, or maybe he was a clone in that moment. You never know. We need to. I don't know why they really brought the whole MI6 thing up, really, because it does feel a bit like just a thing added on the end, or a thing to get all the characters in the right position. It's like The Magician's Apprentice, how the spies all get unit gets part of it and then they're not mentioned for the rest of the episode. I mean, what really happened to Unit at the end of which is familiar, where they're just like, oh yeah, there were loads of flying bombs in the air, and no, there's not. Our bad. But yeah, it feels a bit like that. But it was a very good open to the story, with that whole spy-esque thing, and I think Stephen Fry is probably one of the best parts of this episode. He's Stephen Fry. I mean, what were we expecting? He couldn't have really been awful, let's face it. I really would have liked to see more of Stephen Fry. But yeah, that's Stephen. So I couldn't find a picture of him, so you're going to have to look at Jodie saying, my name's the Doctor, from that scene. But this is the guy, I'm going to talk about the guy who played O, because I thought he was very good until he revealed he was the Master. Because actually, I thought he was very relatable. When he's asked, do you want a trip in the box? He's like, oh my god, yes. And he was literally like my reaction to what it would be like if I was in the TARDIS. I was kind of hoping he would be a companion, but I kind of thought he would be dead by the end of the episode. So in that respect, I didn't see it coming till I saw the TARDIS in the air. But yeah, I think he was very good up until he was revealed to be the Master, actually. I think, again, he was a very good part of the cast. I think his Master performance at first seemed a bit like WTF. When the Radio Times described the cliffhanger as being wow or ha is in your mind, I was just thinking, why is he back so soon, the Master? I actually think the Master should never come back. After what Michelle Gomez did with it, I think that was probably as far as you could take the Master. So in that respect, I'm actually kind of, you know, when Toy Story 4 came out and everyone thought, why is Toy Story 4, why are we having a Toy Story 4? There was so much great closure at the end of Toy Story 3. I think he is the living embodiment of that thought, because I did not want the Master to come back. I did not think it was time for the Master to come back. I think the Master was actually given one of the best endings to a character in Doctor Who history. And it kind of makes the whole of Missy's story arc in Series 10 feel like written off. Like, I mean, he's immediately evil again. I mean, we don't know that for sure, but it's pretty evident that he's up to mischief, which I don't like. I'm not going to lie. I'm going to say this. I did not like the fact that he's back and he's evil. It's a Palpatine move. I'll say it. It's a Palpatine move. It feels incredibly unnatural. It didn't feel planned at all. He's just the Master at the end of the episode, which is a shame because I did like O as a character up until that point. But again, we'll have to wait and see. I think I could like him as the Master. It'll be nice to see the Master evil again. But I'm kind of disappointed because it literally throws out an entire character arc from Series 10. And Series 10 is one of my favourite seasons. So, I'd be a bit sad if I was Stephen Moffat at this point, because he did some of the best growth for a character he's ever done in Missy over that Series 10 arc, and now it's just chucked in the dustbin. So in a way I feel quite angry about that, but yeah, I had to talk about it. But the Masters I'm just finding it hard to compute it, really. I'm sure I'll grow to like it in the end, but I will say that I was pretty angry when he would turned out that he's the Master, because I liked O, but he seemed too good to be evil. He was so relatable. He was so much like me, and I was like, this guy is evil. Maybe I'm evil. Maybe that's how Chris Chibnall sees me. I don't know. But yeah, we're going to talk about Lenny Henry, and then we're going to wrap things up. Benny Henry in this episode plays Daniel Barton, the head of, I think it was Vor, wasn't it? It was Vor, a big search engine, obviously a big commentary on Google and Disney, I think, in a way, because it's big company owning people's data, I think, is a lot what people were thinking with that. But yeah, it reminds me of Kablam in that respect, but they don't spend that much time dwelling on the whole Vor aspect of it. But he's very good. I'll grant him that. He has a confrontation with Jodie. I think Jodie looks hilariously small, God bless her. But I think he has potential to be a good villain. He has a very James Bond-esque sort of traditional James Bond type villain. He doesn't actually get much to do, really, but I think what he does do is quite interesting. We'll see how it works over the next part. They don't end up at the end they don't end up back in time at the end of the episode. They're just in a plane and it's crashing. But I mean, yeah, but he hasn't really got much to say because he didn't really do much. He just pounced around, and there isn't even we don't actually really know if he's evil. All we know is that he knows the creatures from this episode, but we don't know if he's evil. He might be possessed. There's a moment where Yaz is in the kelp lake type thing, and she's sort of like all the creatures. We don't know what they are. They're unnamed. I'm just gonna call them the lights, the light men. I don't know. For the purposes of this video, we're going to call it the lit men, the litmus paper. I'm going off topic now. But yeah, I think the whole, maybe Yaz has become possessed by it. Maybe it's sort of suppressed in her, suppressed inside of her. I guess we'll have to wait and see. But I think as I said, the monster concept I think is actually quite interesting. If Chris Chibnall can build on it, and I think if he's a competent writer, then he might be able to. I do think this episode, he just doesn't get much. Daniel Barton doesn't get really much to do, but he's very good in that action scene in the vineyard, and that was that. Yeah, but I'm gonna wrap things up. I'm just gonna go on my final thoughts, and then that'll be it. Conclusion, I think this episode has a lot of potential if the second part can deliver. It does feel a bit sluggish at the halfway point, like in the middle, much like Resolution felt a bit sluggish in the middle, but overall I agree with the Radio Times. It is an assured return, as they said. The cliffhanger, I think I can maybe get round to it if he's very good as the Master. I don't know, we'll have to wait and see, but we'll see. I think the cast is all phenomenal. They were all amazing last year as well. The writing is a bit off. The directing is fantastic as usual. The soundtrack is comically good, is how I'm going to put it, because I really do. I like Sigan Akinola's soundtrack, and he's very good with this whole Bond-esque theme. He really took that very, very well. The creatures are interesting, and I think it's a very good opener, because it does keep you somewhat entertained. I do think Doctor Who has become a bit like daytime television. Is something you just put on. I think to the general public, it's just something you put on. There are a lot. I think frequently it's going to come less and less fans who overlook into everything, because there isn't really anything to look into. So while it's a sort of it's something that you can put on and really watch at any point in the episode, and you kind of still get what's going on. But I think it's good. It's enjoyable. And I think it has potential if the second part can deliver. I think there's potential too, because it does look very awesome in the next time trailer, and it does. While I might not like the fact that the Master is back, it does have a very good cliffhanger. Although I was feeling a bit more than wow. But yeah, I think it's got me hooked for the rest of the series. So I'm excited for it. I hope you guys are too. So yes, Doctor Who will continue next week. Well, not next week, on Sunday. Yes, 2 episodes in a week. Amazing. It's like Christmas, except Christmas was last week. But yeah, I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10, because I think there's potential for this story. If the second part doesn't deliver, I think I could lower it down to a 6 maybe, or a 5, because the writing here is really weak. But everything else is great. I mean, Doctor Who in a way, Doctor Who has never been better, but in another way, Doctor Who has never been worse. So I have mixed feelings on this. I think I'm going to stick to my guns with the Rise of Skywalker comparison because it does feel like that. It's very jumpy at the start with all the different time zones, but it works. I think it can work. So I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10 for now, but when I do my season overview at the end of the series, which is in March, I will then wrap up my thoughts on this episode because I'm still feeling a bit mixed after seeing it. But yeah, overall 7 out of 10. I think I did enjoy it. I'll say that. I like The Rise of Skywalker. I enjoyed that. It's just something you put on and you enjoy. You don't think too deeply about it, which is what Series 11 is really. It's not bad by any means. It's just not... It's not as engaging as previous Doctor Who's, I think is probably the best way to put it. But yeah, 7 out of 10, I think it's pretty solid as an episode, and it is a step up from Series 11. But yeah, those were my final thoughts on Spyfall Part 1. They may change when Spyfall Part 2 comes out, but it looks good. I'm excited, but yeah. So thanks for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed Spyfall as much as I did, if not more, hopefully, because that's what Chris Chibnall wants. But I will tune into every episode. I'm going to review every episode. I'm looking forward to a lot of it. It does look quite interesting, and I think Chris Chibnall is trying to make it better. A lot of the themes from Series 11 are sort of toned down here, which makes them less prominent, which is both good and bad, I think, in a way, because a lot of the times it was a highlight of Series 11 is that they were trying to add more stuff to it that hadn't been used in Doctor Who before. So I think it's good as Series 11, but probably a bit more, maybe. We'll see. Yeah, thanks for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of New Year's Day, or rest of what remains of your holiday. I hope you guys had a wonderful Christmas as well. But yeah, share your thoughts on Spyfall down below. I'd love to know what you guys thought about it. Maybe you have some more positive opinions than mine, but I do like a lot of it, I will say that. But yeah, thanks for watching.